What is the Montreal Process Criteria and Indicators? It's a measurement tool at its heart.
They provide a common set of measurements, if you will, yardsticks, that can be used to measure actual, real things. Be it acres of forest land, or be it opinions and values.
But again, its real value is that it's pretty comprehensive. So it looks at those ecological, it looks at those socioeconomic factors, and it looks at the institutional process for management of forest resources.
So many of these criteria and indicators are things that speak to us as professionals. They're very technical. That's very important. It's important to have that sort of database there that we can work from. What's really important to, I think, most Americans as they look at a report like this and try and decide for themselves, so is this something I need to be concerned about? Is this something I need to do something about?
We were essentially doing what I would call benign neglect. It was so easy, even though our forest cover had been reduced from almost 100% originally a couple hundred years ago to about a third now. We looked at the forest resource and said, we're not actively managing it very well. PCI have us looking, instead of saying, well, there are questions about whether the resource is sustainable. Is it regenerating? What are we getting a handle on the disease and pests and other problems of the forest resource? So it started us with this whole process and kind of really using that Roundtable motto, the better data for better dialogues for better decisions. And we adopted that as kind of the operational basis for what we're doing in the program.
They ask questions like, what is the state of our watersheds? Is this something I have to be concerned about in terms of whether our community is going to have abundant supplies of clean water in the future? Is this something I need to be concerned about in terms of wildlife habitat, whether game species or endangered species? Is this something I need to be concerned about in terms of climate change? Those who are the really big thinkers, the global thinkers who are ready to act locally. Is this something I need to do something about in my community?
So we started doing data assessments of various kinds, not to provide those specific indicators through MPCI, but that got at the same thing. And so we did urban assessments. We're doing assessments continuing today of all of our large forested county parks.
The indicators then are different dimensions of those values. And whereas the criteria are deliberately couched as value statements, the indicators are more value neutral. They represent different ways of measuring and monitoring the criterion. So, for example, conserving biological diversity has an indicator in its portfolio of the total area of forests. There are also some indicators that deal with forest fragmentation, with the genetic diversity of species in forests, both trees and animals, as well as the species diversity.
The Montreal criteria really struck us very clearly that was a great goal set. It's that everything was subsumed in the values of forest that you would want, and so we took it from there.
People care passionately about forests. If we look at the intense fighting that has happened over the past several decades with forests, it's because people care. And that's a wonderful thing. When people care intensely about something, often they can't hear each other. The Sustainable Forestry Roundtable, the criteria and indicators create a venue where people can look at relatively objective data, sit back and hear each other's perspectives in a different way, have a chance to agree around data, and that's a foundation for agreed upon actions. So the criteria and indicator are very, very useful tools to help people who speak different languages, if you will, hear each other and potentially come to agreed upon decisions.
10, 15 years ago, as a county agency, we thought that taking care of your forest was protecting them from development impact and more or less a no disturbance concept. So the Montreal process opened our eyes a lot, and it really gave us an opportunity to start talking with foresters and people who manage forest resources, and we listened to what they were saying, and they really started having us understand that forest management is a key part of forest health.
Criterion 1 is conserve biological diversity. All the countries agree that's an important value. The second criterion is maintain the productive capacity of forests, a very different facet of sustainability.
And we got stand-by-stand recommendations about what to do. So we're dealing, we changed the major county issue recently was deer control. So we changed the county law to allow us for the first time to do deer herd management in county parks. We're dealing with invasive species in those parks. We're working to diversify the structure of some of the stands, reduce high basal area, overcrowding, overstocking of stands to allow more natural regeneration of systems. The state of Maryland is committing to no net loss of forest. And that is huge. I mean, we've been the only state so far that actually has a Forest Conservation Act for development, and that's been in place for 15 years. And that was a big change because it said, we were losing a lot of forest cover. Maryland's a pretty high rate development state. And the Forest Conservation Act slowed that loss to the point where we were protecting 2/3 of all the forests, even on development sites.
So I think using those criteria and indicators at the subnational scale, which is to say regional, state, even county, or by forest type, could be extremely useful. Because so many decisions about forests are made at the state level, because forest management is regulated at the state level, not at the federal level. In order to support good decision making at the state level, in order to give county planners tools that they need, criteria and indicators would be extremely useful to be brought down to a level they can use. And while it's indicative at the national level, and that's appropriate for participating in a global or international process, it leaves open the question of how do you apply that where the rubber meets the road in the United States, which is at the state and county level.
So in September 2008, just as one example, we held a workshop in Baltimore County that was called Forest Sustainability from Local Governments. And so we tried to put on a workshop that showed as an example, what is this all about and how did we go about doing it? Not that people should do it the way we did it, but just show how you could apply this at a local scale. And we had 22 counties that came, including 15 in Maryland, Delaware was represented, and 5 counties in southern Pennsylvania. So we're finding that that's part of the mission for me as a core group member and a participant in the Roundtable is to say, here's something that we find of value. We think other people will find it of value as well. It's just something they haven't heard about, maybe a little, again, case study about how you go about doing it, and we're more than happy to share that because we know as local governments, they're facing the same management challenges we are.
All across the world you have these countries all talking about how they're managing their forests in their native language. And they're all using the same language of criteria and indicators. That same, to hear somebody in Russia talking about the same criteria and the same indicators that the people in Korea, the same that people in Japan, the same that the people in China and the United States are using in our conversations was inspiring to me. That here are all these various language, and we were all talking about biological diversity in the same way. We were all talking about the laws and the regulations in the same way, and helping increase the awareness of the importance of forests in a way that can inform a global dialogue, because everybody's talking about it in the same way under the same framework, I think is extremely powerful.